Hello, everyone. This is Ed Brendiger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. My guest today is Trish Wilson from New Zealand, and we've been together on a few times, and I think we have a real appreciation for each other. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. This is going to be really, really good, really interesting. And thank you for being here. And just give us a little idea of who you are and what's on your mind today.
Two big questions.
Yeah.
An idea of who I am and what's on my mind. Well, it's 10:15 here in New Zealand. So kia ora, which is Maori for hello, from New Zealand. Aotearoa, which that means land of the long white cloud. But it's only 10:15, so you'd think that there wouldn't be many things on my mind, but there's plenty of things on my mind. And I've already today been to a talk about adaptive leadership first thing this morning. So there was lots of things on my mind from that, and there was lots of things on my mind from your overall question. It was like, what is one thing, or what is something I'd like to bring up or talk about? Well, that exploded. That exploded as well. That thinking about, it's often like, how do you bring all the pieces together is one of my challenges. And someone said a few years ago to me, they said, you've got all the pieces, Trish, but they're upside down and they're behind the couch and they're under the TV. And I was thinking, oh, that's so accurate. Or you go and go, oh, here's another one. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Now what do I do with that? Or how do I put it together? I thought that was quite a perceptive thing for her to say.
To say that they're all mixed up and they're not in the right places feels very pejorative. Like it's not a positive thing. When I would say that all those things you have, all those things you are exactly what is needed.
Yeah, that's also what a lot of people say to me about what I do and how I think. I suppose this is jumping around already, which is, I guess, how I think, much to the frustration of my engineering father, who will go, be a bit more logical, please. COVID and the ability to connect around the world, especially for someone like me in New Zealand, was amazing. So I just joined everything I could. I just connected with lots of people, went to lots of online sessions and things. And a lot of the people who've become my good friends now, who I absolutely hope to meet in person one day, right across the world, they often say, oh, we love your thinking. You've got such a unique perspective on things and how you frame things. And they also sound very positive, but yeah, I guess I've got also, you challenge or you think things or you ask questions that I don't know whether other people are asking, but they seem to enjoy my perception. And someone said that to me on LinkedIn the other day. Said, oh, I really like just sent me a private message just about how much they liked what I was saying and how I was saying it. But I guess it's often not from a sort of dictatorial perspective. It's from something's on my mind and you throw it out there, and then you just wait. And it's obvious there's something on my mind, and it's obvious that I've got an opinion on it, but I don't push that opinion on other people, because and then there's a lot of smart people out there. So then you're drawing all the strands of people who are out there together.
Well, let me ask some specific questions that kind of gets at some of this. So, where do you think we are in the world? I mean, that's a big question. You don't have to answer the whole thing, but just, are we in a good place in the world? Are we in a difficult place? Are we moving forward? Are we stagnant? How do you see us in the world today? What's your sense?
Well, that's a good question, because sometimes you get a bit depressed. You can think, oh, there's just too many stories that don't work or don't add up. But every time I get like that, something, or I think, oh, this is just too hard, I need to stop doing what I'm doing, something will always happen. There's a lot of good people out there. There's a lot of people who care. There's a lot of, you turn around and go, oh, there's a positive story, or there's someone who does want to do differently. So then there's a lot of hope. And then, you just look at not only stories that are on your back doorstep, but just I don't know, people like Fleetwood Mac, you get inspired by them and their story and what they did. And you think, there's actually a whole lot of inspiration out there. And if you can, if we can bring that together, I think that's where it's going to make the change, because I think people are still quite isolated and quite siloed. I remember talking to one of my friends in the UK, and he was bringing more feelings and empathy to a law firm, and they thought he was a bit crazy, but they believed in him, and he was actually doing some really good things. But he said to me, no one else thinks like this around the world, Trish, do they? And I went, yes, there's heaps of them. And he went, are there? And I think it's just that solidity. But my perception from, looking at my work life and looking at everybody who's out there and what's happening is still a couple of years away before we just that change, make there's more of a tipping point. And I think a lot of it, and people, I don't know, I get in a bit of trouble for this, because people don't think that I understand money, but money just is money, and how people treat it and the decisions they make just don't make a lot of sense to me. And so then you question that, and then therefore that makes people think that you're not business minded. We've got to change the money system, because if people are still have to be in the current paradigm of just the whole economic system and how it works, people can't think differently, do differently, be more innovative, quit their job or work 3 days a week or whatever, because everyone's locked in to the system. And you can start to do things differently, but until that completely changes, I think we're still stuck. I'm just going to stick on the speaker.
Okay, what is it that you do on a daily basis? What's your occupation?
Well, I was looking at some of your previous guests and thinking, what would you head up what I do? And I don't know. And the reason, why don't I know? It's probably back to that, you have all the pieces, but how do you put them together, and how do you articulate it in a way that makes sense to me and others? And people do, I'll get to, people do love what I do, but it doesn't automatically jump off the page. And then when you explain it to people, anybody, though less senior executives, they don't seem to quite resonate with it. But I'll be talking to someone at a party, and they'll say, what do you do? And you explain it to them, and they go, that's great, I love that. So I've always been interested in work. Even since my mid-20s, I thought it didn't work, and there was a lot of books that I bought, work doesn't work, and how do you do things better and differently. So I've thought that for a long time. In New Zealand, you can reinvent yourself quite easily. If someone knows you and they say, oh, can you come and do X, then you can. So I've done a lot of contract work, did a lot of contract work for about 15 years. So that got me in a lot of businesses, and you're seeing a lot of different things. So did a stint, not as a private investigator, but I worked for a private investigator. I've done accounts, worked for a hospital, government, business, logistics. I've done a lot of things, and you've seen a lot of things. So you see work in practice and the reality of it. And you think, well, again, how can it be better? And I've always tried to do it better myself, but then I've also, my husband used to call me Buzzsaw Trish for a while, because he said you'd go into an organization and someone would always leave, because I'd get chatting to people, and they'd say, oh, I really want to go and do X, or why don't I do Y? And I was like, well, why don't you? And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So they often would. They'd bounce off to do whatever it was they wanted to do. So I'm always like listening and talking to people. And my very last contract, or sort of that sort of series of contracts, was in continuous improvement. I had a continuous improvement role in a wine company, which was a very, very good wine company, really cool people working there. And so I had this framework. The consultants had been in and they'd left a framework, and my job was to take that to the next level and on-coach people in this framework. So I got this framework, and I went, okay, that's interesting. What is it? So I went and did all my research into this, and then started doing sort of more wider global research. Looked at whether it worked. Some of it did, some of it didn't in the organization. But I also thought, oh, well, are there other people doing this around the country? So then I found more and more people who were doing some sort of continuous improvement. And the more I've looked at it, I think continuous improvement is like broadest perspective possible. There's so many methodologies, there's the traditional ones that people have heard of, like agile and lean, but then, design thinking, that's all continuous improvement to me. It's all in that same bucket. So I looked across the country and I thought, oh, look at all these people who are doing some sort of continuous improvement. But when I was meeting them, I was quite chatty, and we had a lot of people come and visit the wine company because we were doing some really good things. So you meet people, and then again, New Zealand's not very big, 5 million people in total. So I got to know people in the government who were running the improvement programs, and they sent people to our company. And you're just like looking at this landscape going, it's still so siloed. Imagine if you could connect people. There were clusters in various parts of the country that I got involved in. And you'd hear a story in one part of the country and you go, why doesn't, I heard that yesterday, someone else would enjoy that story. Like, how do you connect the dots? So you get this sort of like real cohesive matrix of people. So that was my thinking. And it was like, literally, I started 10 years ago, thinking, how could you do this? And I got more and more involved in this. And so sort of had to leave my continuous improvement job because I was too busy going, oh, you need to talk to such and such, and I was supposed to be doing my job. And I thought, could you make a collaborative network? What would it look like? And what impact could it have? So I've learned a lot over the last 10 years. It is possible. People are keen. People love it. They don't feel alone. They feel inspired. They get a lot more ideas. It's not a moneymaker, especially unless you've got funding. Sort of someone's willing to pay your salary, you can't make money out of it. But yeah, you just see all the amazing people out there. So that's sort of what I was doing, and then it sort of there was a next bit. But
Trish, it makes perfect sense to me, because this is what I've been doing for almost 30 years. So You'll like this. When I first started as a consultant in 1995, a man asked my oldest son, who was 10 at the time, so what does your father do? And he said, Dad talks people into having problems and offers to fix them. And really, I had no background in consulting, and I'd never run a business, but I knew how to talk to people. And like you, I could see things, and I could see things and interpret them from a broad perspective of knowledge that I had acquired from a lot of different sources. So in that sense, we're very much alike. It would be very interesting to have worked together as a team for 10 years. I mean, that to me, has an intriguing premise to that, because what you are, I would say, is a catalyst for the kind of incremental changes that are kind of hidden in the large changes, but the little things that people need to feel free. I mean, like, oh, I'm going to go pursue another job, or I'm going to pursue another. Those little, they're not little. I mean, granted, they're not little, but those kind of decisions are the decisions of innovation, decisions of change, the decisions of recreation, all those things. And someone has to come along and, okay, we're going to nudge you a little bit. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. And so it's not that all these things, the perception, I think, is what I'm hearing you tell me from what other people say, is that all these things have to fit together into some kind of neat package, that here's my package and buyers. But actually, the less you're defined, the more valuable you are, because you are able to walk into any situation and provide real valued service, because you're seeing things and you can be innovative in the way, that's just the way you think. And therefore, why don't we do this? Oh, we haven't thought about that. Well, of course that, you've been waiting on me to show up. Does that sound like what?
Yeah.
Like?
Yeah. And it's, talk about other people feeling alone and what they're doing. I do feel quite alone. So it's nice to be validated. It's nice to have someone say that and not look at you weirdly like, yeah, not look at you weirdly, which is hard.
Well, the weirdness is okay. That's
Yeah,
just like everybody else, you'd be boring. But you're not boring, right?
yep. But I guess it hasn't been okay. Like in lots of situations, it hasn't been okay to be like that and to take that sort of approach. I had this one of my lean friends in New Zealand, who I think is one of our best. He's retired now, but he said to me, Trish, I've only worked with 2 tangent people in my life, and the implication was that I was the second. And he said tangent people are just that. He said you've got to hang on, because they start here and you have a discussion or they understand whatever, and he said then they go. And he said, you haven't got any control over them. Not that they're uncontrollable, but they're doing their thing. They're out there doing their thing. They've gone over here, they've gone over there, they've gone up there. He said, but when they come back, they've come back with something so much better than you would have thought. Absolutely. if you had managed them. So yeah, I guess I'm a tangent person.
Well,
as well.
You sound like you're a polymath. And there's a wide spectrum of what that really means. So it's not really, it's an interesting title, but really what it is the ability to see a lot of different things, knit them together into a consistent picture, and say, why don't we do this? And I think that those people are really going to be the keys to the future. Because so much of the way organizations that function is in a very mechanical, mechanistic, highly structured thing, which suggests that, well, we already know what we need to know. We have already designed the way we want this work, and this is the way we're going to work. And it's very difficult to change that when it stops working. There's no experience of looking at new things. And there's no experience of bringing. I would describe myself as a process consultant. There are a lot of subject experts out there. I'm a process consultant. I'm going to help you process what you're going through, so you can see what you're doing, and be able to say, okay, we need to do it differently. I mean, it sounds like that's a part of what you do. And I don't know many of us like this.
No, I don't meet many. I don't meet many. And one thing that I haven't done is I don't consult. So that makes me even more unusual, because it's like, well, what are you offering, and how do you make money? Which, and I don't do that, I guess, because of a lot of my experiences. I've been on the you realize how much smarts are already in there, and so that the idea is actually, how do you be the person who enables that, and not from a point of view of, right, here's the challenge, here's what we're going to do, here's the setup, but even broader than that. Okay, we've got this challenge, right? Who are all the people? And I had this role a while ago, and I went and talked to all the people, and they were so articulate about what they wanted to do, how they improved it, how they wanted to improve it. And my brief and my line was quite small in terms of what I was asking them. And I'm like, okay, well, there's 10 people, 15 people, start doing even one thing from what all 15 are suggesting, business like that, and then you'll start to achieve what you're wanting to achieve. But yes, you're right. It's not many people, and there are not many people coming at it, I think, from a perspective of we're all as smart as each other. We've just got different skills, or different magic, or different approaches, or different, someone like me thinks like this, someone else, my dad thinks like that. Put it together, and you've got some magic. It's like, how do you put it all together?
So what was your childhood like? Were you like this as a child?
I think I was, and I don't think I was allowed to be as much as I was. I think but I was always exploring things. I loved school, because school was like people. There was people there, and what are people doing, and I always wanted to do different things. And then in high school, you know, the subject changes every hour, so you didn't get bored because you'd go and do something else and go and do something else. I did woodwork through to the year when I was 15. So that's like kind of, so I did it as a serious school subject, which was unusual for a woman. I was like, I like woodwork, I'm going to go and do this. But I also did typing, which is unusual, probably unusual for maybe someone from like me and what I did for my career. But no, I can touch type at speed. So that was really useful. I just went and studied, just did anything like, what's this, what's next, what's next, what's next. And I say to my sister, I say, I haven't got any hobbies. And she goes, yes, you have. And I go, no, I haven't got any hobby, apart from my motorbiking and music. But she goes, yes, you have. Your hobby is all exploring different things. So I often get to the beginning of the year and go, oh, what else can I explore? Who else can I talk to? Or who else can I find? What's interesting out there?
We are so much alike. I mean, I'm grateful for that. I mean, because you know, I just want to meet people, and I found this podcast thing. This is the ideal thing. I mean, I'm having fascinating conversation, and you know, and you're probably when you go to an event and there are a bunch of people you're there that you don't know. Are you meeting people? Are you going up and starting conversations with people?
Oh yeah. much to my family, and so my sister and my husband, they're amazing people, but they're not like me. And they'll go, who are you talking to now? Who are you talking to now? And we went on a I can tell you more about this later because it was very exciting. But we went on a motorbike trip in the wilds of the top of the South Island of New Zealand. Pretty rugged sort of gravel shingle country and stuff. Anyway, we were just about to leave the campsite. So we're leaving the campsite and I look over and I see another female, and that's female adventure riders are not that common. So I stopped the bike, got off the bike and I ran over there, and she and I gave each other a hug, and we were like, we'd never met. And one of the what we were with, so it was me, my husband, and a friend of ours, and the friend said, did you know her? And I went, no. I was just like, there's someone I need to meet her. I'm stopping the bike and I'm getting off and going to talk to her. Anyway, we're now friends. But yeah, you walk in and like, who's doing what? Who's interesting? You know, then you chat to her about her thinking and what she's doing and stuff. So yeah, always.
Yeah, that's exactly. So this is why I think we have this catalytic effect upon people and groups. Networking is such an important facet of this. How do I connect people together? I mean, the premise of the podcast is, who do you know that you think I should know? Because they would make a good person to interview, and would you introduce me? You know, that's the premise. And then most of those introductions lead to a first conversation, which is we've never talked before, but this is our first conversation. And it's fascinating to have those conversations. And so I don't think I'm grateful that we're not like everybody else, because we are value added to everybody else. And we see things in people that we have to affirm. We see it and we say, oh, that's such a great thing. That's such a great thing. You know, yesterday was the big Super Bowl game here.
Oh yeah.
And so I went to a party, and there was a couple at the party I had met once or twice before, and I had met their daughter. The couple that was having the party have a moonshine distillery and a restaurant, and this couple's daughter works at the restaurant, and I really like their daughter. She's 19, and she's just a sweet kid, and very very engaging with the public. She's got a good, and so so I got to know her parents last night, and had great conversations, and then the daughter and her sister show up to pick their parents up. And I pulled all the four of them together, and I talked to the girls. I says, I want you to know how special your parents are. And you will appreciate them more and more as you get older and older, because they really are lovely people, and they're people that you can really trust. And through all the changes that you're going to go through in life, they're going to be the people that you can trust. And I just did that because I just felt that I needed to affirm the parents, but I'm also affirming the daughters, because I'm saying to you, you are blessed by having these parents as your parents.
Mm.
So that kind of stuff goes on all the time.
Mm.
And some of those times you enter into conversation with people where you're discovering that they have a need, and oh, well, have you tried this?
Yeah.
So feeling that all the parts don't fit together, that's an unusual thing to say, because I think it does. I think a lot of people feel that, but they don't know how to articulate that. So do you? I don't really know how to address this, other than to ask a question this way. Do you need someone like yourself to work on you, to help you pull all those parts together? I mean, like, do you work with a coach?
A couple of times I've worked with a really lovely lady in Sydney. Yep. And I've got another. Well, she's a coach, but she's my friend. So I guess
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's in America. So, and then I've met people particularly over the last 4 or 5 years. So once I sort of went from New Zealand, and then New Zealand, bless it, it's I was sort of making more noise globally, and people were like, oh, can I join your network from a global perspective? So it got wider and wider, and then I started looking at the systems thinkers, or like thinking people who are doing more operational improvement, even if they're big picture, sort of hit a ceiling, and then who's trying to change the world. So then I started looking at the systems improvers, as I call them, just from my own mental thinking, the design thinkers, or the holacracy, or the bigger picture. But then they're coming up against the same challenges, and there's the same mindsets in it. So it's actually it's not a hierarchy by any stretch. So yeah, just meeting more and more people. And so there's been a lot of people who've been interested in the concept. And so I've had a lot of interesting conversations, and I can think of, those two and a few more people who've had my back. Josie, of course, in Melbourne, amazing. But yeah, it's the pieces. I think I was saying earlier. There was a gentleman, Brian J. Hennessy, which a lot of people know him. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he inspired a lot of people. And he and I and Josie had a conversation one day, and he said, it's like you're looking for your broomstick, but you haven't found it yet. And so you constantly, it's getting less. The percentage is getting less, as these sort of amazing people, and more people. Perhaps more people globally think I'm less strange than they do in New Zealand. So you're getting a little more affirmation from a global audience.
Good.
So the percentage is changing, but you still, because you don't see many people like you, or you'll say something. Or even this morning I said, the talk that I went to, they had a couple of breakout sessions, and you say your perspective, and you can tell it's just like they've just gone, where are you coming from? And I'm thinking, it's like, okay, well, you're going to tweak around the edges, but you're not going to change this. So all the tweaking is going to be fine. It'll be tweak, 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 good, good, good. You haven't changed this. So you're not going to make the impact that you want to. So then I sort of always feel like
So what's the obstacle for people to begin to think differently in the way much the way that you think? I mean, in what you're thinking is not really analytical. It's more synthetic, synthesizing a lot of different things. And what is it that keeps people from being able to think like that? you have any ideas? Do you have a thought?
Um, just park that question, because I'll go this way to come back to that question, because it might make more sense.
Okay.
So one of my other big part of my background when before I left school and leaving school, was music. So I'm a trained classical flute player. So I've got a degree, diploma, and teaching qualification in arts management. So I did it quite seriously. Was probably in the top 20 in New Zealand. Certainly not the top 10, but in the top 20 before I stopped. And then just sort of made a decision. And maybe if I was 18 again, I'd probably study music and economics, because I was more business minded than I realized I was. But I've got that music side has never really left the thinking. And so I think, like Quincy Jones, and you think, well, as a producer, it's like you've got all these amazing work artists, improvement artists. How do you bring them together, and how do you synthesize them? And who looks like they're actually amazing, but they're going to get in there and they're going to clang, whatever instrument, they're going to go clang, 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 and actually they might be amazing, but they're going to ruin they're not going to make the best music, but fit together to make the best fit. So how do people, but what's stopping people thinking differently? A lot of the people that I know, it's if I had to put my finger on it, it's still the overall structure, the overall way work is structured, work is thought about, leadership is done, decisions are made.
Well, let me ask it this way. Do you think that people think as a product of the structure, or is the structure a product of people's thinking?
Well, I did hear today, I can't remember the words. We can form anything. I can't remember the exact words. We can create it. We created it. We can create it. So yes, it's probably a whole lot of people thinking this is the structure that then makes the structure. I don't.
Are you saying that the structure is the given, and therefore we think based on the structure?
We make the norms, we can change the norms, was the wording. We make the norms, we can change the norms.
But
I think.
But is the structure a norm, or is that something else? This is really getting deeply philosophical, but I think there's a purpose to this. There's a.
Well, I think it's what we've all accepted, though.
Not always.
No, true.
I don't accept that. I don't accept it. That's why I'm asking the question. I think organizational structure is the obstacle to all thought and innovation and progress, because it forces people into these static, closed roles, and so collaboration and conversation is not really allowed to happen, and all these improvement things are not changing structure. They're just making people feel good about themselves, but the things aren't changing.
Well, I must admit that when you just said that, I went, oh, I'm so relieved that you think that that you think that the structure is the problem, because I totally think that, and I often rail against the structure, railed,
yeah,
and that gets me into trouble. I possibly need. We're all human. I possibly need to work out how to do that better. But I think it's still, when you look at it and you look at all the stories and you see just how many people's lives are being wasted by the structure and the system, you just can't keep quiet.
Well, and what I find, okay, this structure is not working. Let's go to the structure shop and buy a new structure.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Structure, there's an old architectural engineering thing that says that form follows function. but what is the function? And I think what you're doing is you're creating a lot of dynamism in conversation with people, and they're seeing things. And so why is it that, well, we're gonna change this program, we're gonna change this approach, we're gonna change this, but we're not gonna change the structure. The structure is given. So what is if we were to start over from scratch and create this beautiful thing that we want to achieve, what kind of structure do we actually need for this thing to succeed? That's the last question that we should be asking, but we're not even asking that question.
Yeah, and I like that question. And I probably, to that sort of music analogy, it's like, what are we trying to create? And if we've got all the musicians, or you can use any analogy, all the different sports people, whatever, you've got rock, you've got country, you've got all these things. So then if everyone makes their music and it fits together, sometimes it overlaps, sometimes it doesn't. Yes. What are people's, I can't think of it like one word, but what are people's goals or ideas or aspirations or visions or problems, or challenges? There's a whole thing that people like, I want to do X because of Y, and then create something around that.
And it's very multidimensional. I mean, what's going on in their head and in their heart, multidimensional. But they have to break out of the structure in order to go pursue it.
Yes, and
you,
I don't.
And you said that you've encouraged people to do that.
Oh, I do. Well, even last year, I was talking to these two people who happened to be younger. I think they're both in their early 20s. And one she was like, I don't know where to go or what to do. And she actually seemed very similar to me. So I think just hearing another story hopefully gave her some guts. And then you're just listening to, well, when you're talking to me, this is what I hear you get really energized about. You get energized about this bit and you get energized about that bit. And she goes, but nobody's putting those bits together. And there's the challenge. It's like nobody's putting them together. And then there is her magic and what she wants to do. And you're like, well, how do we make that happen? And it's that same thing. It's like, she's obviously skilled. She was, a really amazing young lady, but she's got nowhere to take it. And you're like, well, that's a problem. Where can we put that? How can we fund? Well, how can you fund it? How can you do something? How can you support it so that it's sustainable? And then another just a younger gentleman, he was talking about his job and what he was going to do. And he said, I don't just want a job, Trish. I've watched people and I just don't want to get, and I want it to matter. So I said, good, excellent. And it seemed like he didn't always get that reaction. It was probably like, well, just get a job and, tick the box and go and do your thing. And like, well, no, because again, there's another really smart person who could be of amazing, I don't like the word value because that distorts things in this context.
Yes.
But be amazing in the world if he just supported what he wanted to do and what he was good at. And my dad said that the other day. He goes, the challenge is we've got, what do you do with people who have their magic and have the good things that other people get value from? How do you fund it so that you can be, not, he didn't say pay your bills, but, and it's so crass. I have not found a way to describe that properly. But, if you're going to do your magic in the world, you need to be part of the whole exchange system. So you've got to have something that means you can then, buy your groceries and ride your motorbike.
Well, it's, there are examples out there of people who were creative geniuses who never saw the success that came after they were gone. I'm thinking about Vincent van Gogh. I think he sold one painting during his life, and now he's recognized as maybe one of the greatest painters of all time. You see, I think that there's some of us who are breaking trails through the wilderness, and there's a wilderness out there, and we've been stuck inside. Richard Merrick talks about walls. He's been writing about breaking out of the walls, of the, and you think about forts and castles. But I think that if you stay inside the walls, then you die from starvation, creative starvation. But if you break out of it, like getting on your motorcycle and driving out into the upper mountains of northern New Zealand, like you did, you discover things, and it fills you with meaning, purpose, joy. Um, that's in thinking about this house that I bought, I had just there's a lot of work that goes into this place, but I feel joy. That's what I feel because I see what is possible. I, I'm wondering, this is another question for you. I'm wondering if the time is right for you to write a book about all this. Because I hear all these things that you're saying, and I'd say I'd like to see all of this coalesce into something which I can put my hands on and read what Trish is thinking. Um, there's something really significant here. The scatteredness and the multiplicity of it is not a problem. It's a solution to a problem that needs to be articulated. And I find that it's really difficult to articulate it if all we're having are verbal conversations. We need to sit down and have to write. So I wonder if there's a book in you that's now begging you to, and I'm suggesting that you don't have to do it because I'm suggesting it, but I wonder if that would be something of real value and where you can articulate what you're really thinking in a way that where you have to do it in sentences instead of fragments. And a lot of us operate in fragments of thought, but if you could write it in sentences and in paragraphs and in chapters, it becomes something tangible. And for example, when I wrote this, Circle of Impact came out in 2018, I've been working on this idea for 15 years. I've been practicing it. I've been trying to use it. I feel like at the point that I wrote this, I am where you are. Having all this experience, having all these meaningful relationships, seeing how my ideas make a difference, but also seeing that it's not getting rooted and grounded into something tangible that's firm and substantial. And that firm and substantial, like a book. I mean, I treat this as like a calling card, a business card. And I can give that. I gave it to my friend at lunch today. I said, this is what I've produced. I want you to have this. I think that would be a significant contribution to the thought that let me put it this way, all the ideas that have emerged to advance organizations over the last 50 years, all of them are quickly becoming irrelevant. And it's the thoughts that people like you and me have right today that will be the relevant ideas for the next generation or two. And so I'm not asking you to make any decisions, but if you decide you want to do that, I will work with you on that. I will help you because I think you have things to say. I know you have things to say that are worth hearing. And I'm just in the few times I've seen you interacting on these Zoom calls, I know that there's lots of depth there that is waiting to be released.
Wow. Well, that's just wow, but also that's really thoughtful. Thank you. I'll take you up on it, because it keeps coming up. Someone asked me if I was a journalist last year, and I did start a book, because with all the work experiences and the people and the commenting on things. So yeah, I think you're on to something.
Well, you need to hear what my advice is to people, which is don't write a book.
Yeah.
Just write.
Book,
Just write.
Yeah.
And the book will show itself.
Mm.
And write for the joy of seeing what's inside of you become clear.
Mm.
There's no more greater pleasure than to have that happen. And you know, you can monetize that. You can do it. You know, you can write a Substack, and out of that comes the content for a book, which gets re-edited and reformatted and formulated into something that's like a book.
Mm.
And then from that comes a talk. You know, here's what I need to say to you all, and this is our future. You know, and it'll be distinct enough so that it is pointing people in a direction which says, we're going to go this way. Why don't you join us? I mean, I feel like we're on the same page, and we're pointing in a direction which says this is where we need to go. And there are a lot of other people, and a lot of these people have been a guest here. I mean, you think about Jennifer Hunter and Jason Barnes of Genesis Design, and John Morley and John Granholm. You know, they're people. Jill Tiny is another who I see is thinking in these, and the thing is that they're thinking in terms of collaborative relationships and conversation, which I think is what you and I are talking about too. And so this is not a lone venture sort of thing. So tell me this. I want to change the subject a little bit. When we talked or exchanged emails back in, I think it was in early January, you said that it would be a while before you could schedule because you were on this motorcycle trip. Tell us about this trip, and I'm curious about what that's like to venture off into the beautiful wilds of New Zealand on the back of a motorcycle.
Well, what it's like is amazing. We have some really fantastic motorcycling country here. We have a lot of backcountry roads, and I've been riding now, I think 6 years. So I only got my license not too long ago. Just didn't ride when I was a kid, didn't ride in my teens or anything. Liked motorcycles, but only never really got on the back. And then one day I went, right, let's learn to ride a motorcycle. Anyway, we took to it like ducks to water, and eventually I got my own bike and off I go. So we went to the top of the South Island and rode a lot of, I don't know whether you call them same, we call them gravel roads rather than shingle, but so I've got an adventure bike, a little Honda, and I've got adventure tires on it, and so then it doesn't slip as much, which is good. They were very they liked rock, the tires liked rocks, which was good, because there's a place called Rainbow Valley Road, and it's only open over summer, so it's summer here in New Zealand. Right. So it's only open December till April, and it's there's river crossings. One was up to the sort of like knees. I had a bit of help with that one, but certainly got over myself. And yeah, just the amazing scenery. Just the North Island and South Island are quite different. I mean, the whole country's built on we've got on a fault line. So, but the landscape and the trees and stuff are different. So there's much bigger hills in the South Island, mountains. So you're just sort of riding through the river crossings, through the over the rocks and down the hills. And we went down one hill, and one of the guys had said to me, momentum is your friend, because you don't want to come off and you've got to balance yourself properly. So I got on the top of this hill with all these rocks and things, and I went, momentum is my friend, and I just sped down the hill. Luckily didn't, but yeah. So it's just amazing. Meet a lot of really cool people, and again, you meet you never stop networking and you never stop asking. We stayed in this one Department of Conservation hut, and you get there, and there were some people, you share it. So we got there, and there were some people there already, and there's 2 new people to get to know and find out what they do. And yes, I did make friends with them, and I have their number. So but yeah, just the adventure of riding. We get out as much as we can, travel around New Zealand.
Were you in some of the area that appears in Lord of the Rings?
Not this time. We were a bit further north of the South Island, but yes, so we were sort of in this bit, and the Lord of the Rings bit is in the middle.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But dare I say it, because it makes it sound like I'm skiting, but New Zealand is in reality what it looks like on the postcards. So that it's not photoshopped. That is what it looks like. It is that nice. It is that pretty, and we've got everything in one country. You've got rivers, you've got the sea, you've got the volcanoes, you've got tramps, you've got the geothermal activity. Yeah.
Hobbits.
Haven't met any of them personally. Hobbiton is about 2.5 hours from here, to go and visit the Hobbiton village.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you're very fortunate to live there. I was in school with a fellow from Auckland. I think he was from Auckland.
Mm-hmm.
And this is 40 plus years ago. I don't know what happened to him. We weren't friends. He was a little ahead of me, but it looks like a beautiful place, and I'm sure that inspires a lot of this thinking of how rich the world is. I mean, that's what I take from what you're saying, is that this is the world is not rich in money, but rich in beauty and whatever that other half a dozen words need to be there. And you're fortunate. So
yeah, well, there's so much. Yes, and I was just scribbling a few things to make sure I add in, but you think that way, and then you look and you find it. And there was somebody contacted me on LinkedIn from people contact you and you sort of go, what is this? Where's this going to go? But this was a young man from Bangladesh, and I got to know him, and he's an amazing young man. And when I was talking to him, he's like, how do we make manufacturing in Bangladesh a better place for the whole country? How do we make Bangladesh a better country? And that was one of his goals. And it's like, I'm sure he still thinks that. But you just think that, how do you fan that flame? How do you help him? What does he need? Just think so you're always looking out for the amazing.
Well, what you just pointed to, that interaction with that young man in Bangladesh, the conversation we're having today. I mean, you think about that, this would not have been possible 25 years ago. Hmm. And in order to know someone from another country, you'd have to go to that country and meet them. Now we have this technology, and I think this technology is changing things in a sort of a hidden way, because we take it for granted that, well, I can log on to Zoom and I can talk to Trish for an hour or hour and a half, and it doesn't matter that she's 18 hours away. Hmm. It really doesn't matter. And yet a lot of the mindset of the world is still operating under, well, she's there and he's there, and they're not really connected, when we really are connected and we can see things happening. I mean, this podcast has been a testimony to that global linkage that comes from the willingness for people to talk with one another. And when they talk with one another, then they become supportive of one another.
Mm.
And I say to you, whatever I can do to help you, I'm glad to do it. And I say that to most of my guests, because
Mm.
once you're on the podcast, you're a friend of mine, and
Mm.
I that's really, I used to say that if we've had a meal, we're friends for life. And now I'm saying if we had a conversation on the podcast, we're friends for life.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? What does that really mean? To know that all these people that we are now engaging in conversation with around the world can be our friends for life. What does that strike you as someone who thinks in the way you do?
Well, then my brain's it's like a big fabric. So there's, or like iron filings. So some of the iron filings have stuck together.
Yeah.
But then you want, well, what about the other iron filings? So I'm thinking, well, then do you invite all the people that you've met so far to a group meeting, 6 people or whatever, and so you have podcast guests group.
Well, I'm getting ready.
I think I saw that actually. Did I see you doing that already?
I'm going to do that. I'm going to have the first one. It's for the paid subscribers, but I'm going to have the first one at the end. I'm going to do it on the Tuesday or Thursday of every month. I think it's last Thursday of every month, and do that same time and unscripted. We'll just introduce. I'll have some kind of simple way of introducing one another, and then I'll just say, so what do you want to talk about? And kind of the only forbidden thing is things that are ideological in nature, politics, that sort of thing, because that just splits people, divides people. But so what, our stories unite us together.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm curious, in your interaction with all these people, do you feel like we share more in common with people around the world than we find that separates us?
Yes, though the people I'm talking to are already quite curious, so they're already not thinking that they're separate. So even the young man from Bangladesh, for example, he didn't come in thinking, oh, I'm separate. He came in, so it was the lens of continuous improvement. The people who are interested in that already coming with a curiosity and how do we do better, and so then they're not really interested, or they don't really care where people come from or what company or whatever. It's just like, do you think like I do? Great. So they come from quite a different perspective, I think. So yeah, I do find, and she's one of my definitely really cool friends, but also I look up to her as well, Josie in Gibson in Melbourne, Australia. The curating, not from an arrogant point of view, because back to that sort of like Quincy Jones music example, is I'm one of the musicians. I just happen to be really passionate and like bringing people together. But so when you bring, I used to say when I bring people together, there's 10 people, then I'm 10%, and often I'd be less than, I'd be like 5%, because you'd ask one question and they'd be so interested in talking to each other that you didn't need to say much, and that's how it should be. Just that sort of real, but it's quite an art, I think, to be that curator, holder of the space, producer, bring in the voices, not ask other voices, to really have that element of trust, because I think a lot of conversations at the moment don't go deep enough, because there's not that real depth of trust that you can really say what you think. I think even in the change circles, if you really said, but let me challenge that, I don't feel like it might be as popular as it should be. So to create that, and I always think it's a great conversation if I've said very little, because that means you have set it up in a way that everyone has trusted each other to be talking to each other. They don't need you that much, because they're like, I trust this. I trust what's happening. I've trusted that Trish has invited us here. boom, off we go. So yeah, I think there's quite an art to that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You've got to really care about people, be really interested, genuinely interested and genuinely care, I think, as well.
And you see, I think that what's happening is this is the reversal of what happens with social media. In social media, we're all connected, but we're connected to the algorithm,
Mm.
and we serve the purpose of numbers, the numbers, the how many people are watching someone's YouTube video. And I'll tell people I'm not chasing numbers, I'm chasing people, relationships. And so when we can talk with each other, then I think something reverses and we actually can build community. And
Mm.
and and a global community that is local, because like you're talking with this guy in Bangladesh, and you're not talking about improvement all over the world. You're talking about how can he improve things in Bangladesh. That's his local place. So this kind of global conversation is really taking place in local communities, and that to me is what's exciting.
Mm. Yeah, it really is. I thought something, but I can't remember what it was. Are you going? Oh, there's to go a little sideways. There was someone I'll put you in touch with, because you were saying, you asked me at the beginning or near the beginning, what about, was there hope, or did I see change, or what was happening?
Yeah.
There's a guy called Bob Emiliani, and he's in the States, and he's come from the lean manufacturing world. But he's got a very interesting perspective that and again, you not only are you looking at all the people, you're looking at the themes and the ideas that everyone's talking about, and go, what's sticking? What actually sticks with me? Like, with those kids' sticky hands that you throw it at a window and you see if it sticks. His thinking keeps sticking with me, whereas other people, it sticks and then it falls off. And you're like, and his thing and he's, again, a lot of his framing is from the lean manufacturing, but it's completely transferable, is classical management versus progressive management. So as to why a lot of the continuous improvement thinking isn't sticking, that there's a lot of classical management mindset in the majority of organizations and leaders, that they actually don't want progressive thinking. So I said, I will put you in touch with him, because I think, and he's a good guy and got some really interesting things to say, and I think you would find that really interesting. Actually, I'd be interested to be a fly on the wall of you guys' conversation. But
maybe
I think
maybe the three of us could have the conversation.
Yeah. I would. I'll do that. I'll set it up, because and
we'll do it. We'll do a three-way, and I think that makes it even more. That allows me to expand the method here. Where it's it becomes more interesting when you have three people talking. Maybe it has to be the right three, but yeah, let's do that. And we just do by email, and I'll respond, and we'll figure that out. That sounds.
I think you'll like it. I think you'll find it very interesting. And actually, I put him in touch with a couple of other people, and you sort of like thinking, and they were similar thinking, but again, the people are still, I don't think they've really got that what we do and what we're talking about in that synthesis is actually something that needs to be much more prominent and much more part of everyone's days and activities and stuff. So they got together, but they haven't got talked since, but they all said that was a really good conversation and well worth their time, and they were all busy. So I was like, phew. The fact they all said it was worth their time. So Bob was part of that conversation. So yeah,
well, that's a goal I have for each episode, is that the time is worth it. And the idea of doing things in this space here is so that people feel like they can come to something and there's something worthwhile that's taking place that's unscripted. So everything else they do in their life is scripted, you know. Oh, we're going to go see so and so, and he's going to talk, or she's going to talk about this thing, and
Mm,
well, I've already read her book, and so I know what she's going to say, but I need to be there because of the networking that needs to go on, you know. But it's almost like we're in automatic mode when we enter into those situations.
mm.
Um, so let's gather some, you know, 5 or 10 people over here in this room and look at each other and say, well, what do you want to talk about?
Mm.
What's on your mind? And and don't define it any more than that.
Yeah. And the gold that comes forth from people when they're sharings in their stories is, yeah, you only need a headline, you know, just a starter, catalyst, something. Or sometimes you don't even need that. One day I joined people. Well, mind you, I connected people from the UK Blood Service and the Australian Blood Service, and I thought, oh yes, I'll need to say some things. Anyway, everyone started coming on Zoom, and I went to open my mouth, and one of them said something, and I think in the next hour and a half, I literally talked for about 2 minutes. So I didn't even need to say anything. They were just so interested in each other and what they were doing, what they're up to.
Fantastic.
So
That's great.
yeah, I
Well,
think one of the, sorry.
well, go ahead and say what you're going to say. I feel like we're coming to the time of
Mm,
closure on the podcast, but I want to hear what you have to say. I mean, it's like I did with David Ross. We went so
he's
long,
lovely.
and I had to split it into two episodes.
Oh, he's a good man.
It's
Mm.
best.
I think it's, oh, I was thinking there's a couple of things. One, what I get passionate about is the individuals, and you hear the stories and you just see their magic and you just think, oh, look at what they could do, or how they could do it, or what did I do? Oh, one day I asked 10 people, the youngest was 16, the oldest was 90, if they would do a different job again, if they started again. No, the youngest can't have been 16. She must have been in her early 20s. And they all said yes. And so then you hear all these stories about what people would do and why they would do it, and say, oh, how can we get that? But also the big picture, you know, that what's the structure that would enable that? And as you said before, it's like, how do we get a bit of structure? How do we create, design, make better work music? Or there's a what's Maori for work is actually mahi, MAHI. But it's more than work, in my understanding. It's what we do. So I love that word, mahi.
Is it like a word for being?
No, it's more like what you do. So what work do you do? What
What's your
activities? Yeah, I'm thinking. But you also mentioned about New Zealand, and I thought, and being different, and having a voice, and a voice that's different, and adds to what we need in the world. And I think being female, being from New Zealand, because New Zealanders, Kiwis are, we're quite we're quite innovative. We're possibly a little bit irreverent. We're quite, you know, it's quite a flat society in lots of ways. And being creative. So being female, Kiwi, and creative, I think it's quite an unusual, and business, and really into work and business and things, is quite a unique combination, I think.
it is, and it's just it's welcome and it's appreciated, and the thing is that there are probably millions of people that you could say the same thing about, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they too need to be recognized and appreciated and celebrated for their uniqueness, and encouraged in their contribution to their community and into their network of relationships. So it's and I think 10 years from now, I think we'll see that we've gone. You made that kind of transition image early on. I think that that's the transition we're in, and I don't think the people that want to kind of return, the world to a more feudal world are gonna succeed at that. Doesn't mean they won't destroy a lot of stuff. They're going to create all kinds of havoc and all kinds of pain and crisis. But at the same time, that is going to liberate us from the old ways of doing things. And it'll make it more likely the sort of things that you and I have talked about will be able to be acted on. So it's a natural transition that we're going through.
Yeah, exactly. And then how do you bring all those amazing mahi artists
Well,
together?
well, we're already doing that.
Yeah. Well, how do we continue? How do we do even more? How do we do even more?
It will just grow because it will be the thing that works. And I'm convinced that there's laws of the laws of physical life or whatever. And one of those things, the things that work and will continue to work because they work. I don't know if I've never said that in that quite that way, but it's like the Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the great Russian writer and chronicler of the Gulag. He encouraged people to live not by lies, and the reality of not living by a lie is that you live by what is true, but you have to kind of figure out what truth is. But if you live by lies, you continue to have to live by more lies because every lie has to be built or sustained by another lie. Mm-hmm. And at some point you lose yourself. You lost yourself. You lost not just your dignity, but you've lost everything that you value, because something that's valuable is something that's true. And I think that that's where we're headed. And so it's nice to, and there's no need for a club, no need to establish some kind of label for this, because that just limits it. It just marginalizes it. So I don't know what we're doing, and I don't want to know, but we're going to continue to do it.
Yeah.
That's what I think is important for people to hear, and I think that there is a need for us to congregate and to communicate, to talk with one another. I think there's a lot of need for that. And I'll just say this to the audience: if you are one of these people that you feel like is like us, where all these parts of us don't fit together very simply, and that you feel always on the outside, and you always feel like you don't fit in, and you just don't understand who you are because you feel a sense of aloneness, well, just understand that that's okay. And what I've said this a couple of times last week, that I've never felt like I fit in anywhere, even when I've been included. And it's because as you probably would understand, it's because we have something to offer which no one else offers. And therefore we have the opportunity to make a difference that matters. And, I'm curious about this guy in Bangladesh. I'd like to talk to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a whole nother story. But you see, having his conversation here is something that would have an effect upon a lot of people whose perception of Bangladesh is what it was like at the partition, back in the mid-20th century, or who remember the flooding that happened there, I think in the 60s or the 70s. It's been a tragic place, and instead of a place of opportunity. So, well, Trish, thank you for being here. It's been fun.
Yeah. Well,
And anything you would like to have me put into the show notes as a way to connect with you and LinkedIn, things like that, send that to me. We'll put it in the show notes. And then maybe we'll talk with your friend. I forget his name already, but
yep.
we'll do a three-way conversation and see where that goes. And I think that would be fantastic.
Awesome.
So
thank you for doing what you're doing.
thank you for what you're doing too. I think we're at kind of two poles, northern and southern hemispheres, 18 hours apart, but it's like we're working on the same project every day.
Yep.
And that means a lot to me because I don't have those people around me. And I know you don't either. So let's stay in touch.
Yeah.
And people who are watching, you need your friends and you need your family. You need to stay connected to them. And you need to have the conversations where you understand why your relationships with each other matter. Because hard times are coming. I'm convinced, but we will go through those and we'll come out the other end. And if you can hang together, then you will see beautiful things result. That's my hope.
Mm.
And so thank you for watching, and please sign up, hit the like button, and if leave a comment, because we're always encouraged by what you all say. And we'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye-bye.
See ya.